We've really suffered from a drought here in the UK. Everything is dry. It's a banging heat wave. Many of you in parts of the world will experience this all the time, every summer. We don't here in the UK. So I thought I'd bring you 12 flowering plants, perennials mostly, couple of bulbs that just look fantastic despite the drought and the extraordinarily prolonged hot weather. And I thought I'd take you to Sissinghurst Castle, where they assured me they didn't water the garden. They watered their containers, but not the garden. So what you're seeing is plants that really have survived without help, which gives you a really good idea how to recreate the cottage garden style, even in a heat wave. So let's get into it. And you know what? I actually forgot to add sedum. This little blush pink one here, sedum is extremely drought tolerant. As you can see, it is thriving. So class that as just an extra bonus plant up front. So number one, I'll ease you in gently with one you all know, and that is lavender. Lavender was used extensively in Sissinghurst in the cottage garden areas and also in their dry gravel garden area. It's really useful in an area that is battered by harsh sun. In fact, if you get a lot of rain on lavender, it will rot the roots, and it kind of separates the top of the lavender above ground from the roots below ground because it just rots. Another thing you need to bear in mind with lavender is it does need watering in pots. It will just die if it's not watered in a pot. I found that to my cost. I had a large lavender in a pot that was in shade that was getting very tall because it was stretching up to reach the sun. So I moved it into the sun, and then I took it for granted that it wouldn't need watering very often, and it's nearly died. I'm not actually sure if it's going to recover. So do bear that in mind. Lavender in the ground is very different to lavender in a pot. Number two is yarrow or achillea. Treat it the same as lavender, very drought tolerant, heat tolerant. But again, if it's in a pot, you're going to need to water it. It will wilt fast. In Sissinghurst, they had the same ones as me, really. They had the flat mop head type achillea, which are more related to the wild hedgerow achillea that you would see, although now you can get them in all different colours. But they also had achillea the pearl, which it's actually thriving in my garden at the moment as well. And I know for a fact I certainly haven't been watering the ones in my borders at all, but I have one in a pot on my drive that has in fact died because I forgot to water it one day. So I won't keep mentioning whether it needs to be watered in or out of a pot. All of these plants are in the ground in the border, so they're benefiting from the cooler earth, and obviously a cooler earth is more moisture retaining, so they are surviving longer in the ground. So going forward for the rest of this video, just remember all these are planted in the border. I will do a separate video on plants for containers. Number three is geranium. So these probably have been Chelsea chopped. Geraniums famously are very good for blooming early, then you chop them all back and then they come up again later in summer. Now, the great thing about geraniums is even if the flowers by now are getting a bit straggly, the foliage still looks good in the borders. So you have a nice splash of healthy, vibrant green where you would otherwise have dead straw-like plants or bare soil. So geraniums really have a very good dual purpose. They're good for flowers, but they are really good for a nice, neat, green, lush mound, even in a drought. Number four is phlox. I can concur. They are the same in my garden. They were spectacular. They are spectacular, and I haven't watered them. The leaves can look a little bit limp and droopy, as you can see here, but it does not really seem to affect an established plant at all. And these ones at Sissinghurst, of course, are established. They use them in almost every garden that they had at Sissinghurst, which is broken up into separate gardens, and they were in all of them. Dry gardens, the cottage garden, even the white garden. They were everywhere. And the pollinators love them. And I actually came across the most magnificent sight on this phlox here. And it was, in fact, the hummingbird moth, which has recently made headlines in the UK for making an appearance due to the dry weather and the heat wave we're having. And so I was absolutely delighted. I heard this loud whirring and I thought, that's not a bee. And there it was, the hummingbird moth. So that was a super delight to see that on these phlox. Another reason for growing them, because there was two and they appeared to really love them. Number five is aster. I've covered asters before at Sissinghurst because they have a huge variety of asters in their gardens. And I was surprised to see theirs already flowering because mine aren't. Although, to be fair, I have only just planted mine out from pots. But you can see there's different varieties. Like these look like little daisies, but they are in fact asters, and they're so prolific and tolerant. I cannot recommend them hardly enough. I'm not talking about the annual China asters that you can use as cut flowers. I'm talking about more hardy asters that are perennial and will come back year after year and just be super hardy. Number 6 is Origeron or Origeron. Some people say I just don't like the hard G myself, so I say Origeron. And they self-seed all over Sissinghurst. I've actually introduced some into my garden because I just love them so much. And look how good they look in just the cracks of your pavings and things like that. So where you've got hard landscaping, they just soften the edges, and obviously they provide also cover for pollinators and little critters that are essential for the biodiversity of the garden. So do consider using them. They're super hardy and they just go from strength to strength every year. And as an aside, you will notice a little daisy-like theme going on where daisy-like flowers, those small, tiny little petaled flowers, do seem to do really well. You've got the aster, you've got the origeron. There were also feverfew, chamomile, and Shasta daisies also do well in a drought. But I'm not going to include those as plants on their own. They're just extra bonus plants for you to think about. All seem to thrive during the drought here at Sissinghurst. Number 7 is salvia. This, I think, is Salvia caradonna or similar. I toyed with the idea of including salvia, but because it just was so abundant here in this garden, even though the flowers were going over, it still added textural interest to the garden to help fill those dry gaps, while still adding some colour, albeit a bit faded. But then again, there are so many varieties of salvia that flower at different times of year, and there were lots of them at Sissinghurst. They always use a lot of salvia at Sissinghurst and Great Dixter, which you know is another favourite garden of mine, and I'll be visiting there soon as well. So salvia, because it's more available, easily available for certainly newer gardeners, then that's why I wanted to include salvia here. Number 8 is Agapanthus. Obviously, it has beautiful, lush green foliage, which is much needed in a drought where your garden is dry and brown. And then it has these lovely blue balls of flowers on top of tall, slender, elegant stems. I really like the foliage because it makes a nice, neat mound. And then, of course, you've got these lovely flowers on top. And if you don't like the blue, don't worry. Agapanthus comes in different colours and you can get some more exotic varieties. I saw some at a specialty nursery just down the road from me. One was called Fireworks. It was delicious. If I can find it, I'll pop it in this segment here now so you can see it. And it was just really, really beautiful. I definitely recommend Agapanthus, and they're easy to grow. So if you're a beginner gardener, don't be intimidated by them. Here's some pink ones here. And another shade of blue here. They were used obviously extensively in Sissinghurst, which is fairly obvious because they just require very little to no care at all. Number 9 is Eucomis, another one with really good lush foliage. Doesn't it look tropical? It looks like it belongs in a rainforest, but it's actually really, really hardy. These ones are quite new and only just coming into flower. They're probably a different variety as well to these ones, which of course are much further ahead. And again, these were littered all over the borders at Sissinghurst. And, you know, I think I'm going to have to get some from my garden. Unlike some of the other plants here, these are grown as a bulb. So you would need to source these online. And this particular one you're looking at is called Eucomis Oakhurst. So for those of you who like those kind of muted, soft colour palettes, beige, apricot colour palettes, then this one is absolutely a must for you. I should have said, if I didn't already, this is more commonly known as the pineapple lily, if you hadn't guessed that already. Number 10 is Verbena bonariensis, and there's this regular one that you will see everywhere in the garden centres. It's readily available. You can buy it. It's really nice and tall, and it's actually, for me, it's best planted in huge clusters where it can make a really big impact. However, it does self-seed, which is probably how these ones have arisen. This particular one here is a Verbena bonariensis, but it's a candelabra. So it's just a slightly different arrangement of the flower heads, which is more interesting and textural in a border. Number 11, again, these were everywhere. These are the campanula or chimney bellflower. So they're Campanula pyramidalis. And of course, they have the classic campanula flower, except they're on a really tall statuesque stem. And they were everywhere. They were just literally dotted. I don't know whether they self-seed. I mean, I know when I grow Canterbury bells, which are the same family, they self-seed. So it was interesting to see these popping up everywhere in this classic sort of pale blue lilac colour, but they also had white ones there as well. And number 12, save the best till last, is the lily. These are what are known as, more commonly known, the common name is like a Turk's cap shape lily. And these ones are very tall, so they're not like your normal common or garden daylily, which is sort of about knee height. These are much taller, as you can see, and they're just really stunning and beautiful, and desperate need for a splash of vibrant color in the summer, and these certainly do deliver. And I feel like they're very much like candelabras as well, just sort of dangling down these beautiful flowery vibrant flowers, and they really were a showstopper in the border. I was surprised I didn't see more of them. They come in a bulb if you really fancy buying them. They're coming bulbs. I haven't got any in my garden, sadly, because I have a cat, because they are toxic to cats, but I think I'm going to put some in my front garden where my cat is not allowed to go. These really tall ones here, I think this variety is Anastasia. I'm not sure. But anyway, if you just Google giant lily, then the taller bulbs will come up. Right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had actually loads more content to bring you, but I mean, the video would have just gone on too long. So I'm going to have to break it down into other videos and do some of the containers, some of the more speciality plants. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, you learned a lot and you found it inspiring, then please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with your friends. And I'll see you again in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.